Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of All Things Crime. Got my man, Tom Myers, with me. We are going to talk about a case that it's hit the news lately, and I think it's one of those kind of a soft target nightmare type of a scenario where it's just, man, it's one of those where kind of suburbia type of small town, lady just out going for a jog. She gets attacked, and next thing you know, she's gone. Mom of 5 kids. Rachel Morin is her name. And I just a horrific case, but there's some really interesting things that have been developing the last couple of days, and Tom and I want to talk about this. So, Tom, welcome back.
Yeah.
And how you doing, buddy?
Good to be here, Ranger. How are you?
Yeah, doing great. So tell me what you know about Rachel Morin.
And we got a good one going here, meaning as crime fighters, I got to go back to Andrew Cunanan or something like that with the killing of Johnny Versace, old-fashioned manhunt going on here. And it's dropping all sorts of breadcrumbs right now. And it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow where Rachel was murdered in this park up in Maryland. And then very suddenly yesterday, they had a connection, a CODIS hit to Los Angeles. You want me to give you some background, or how do you want me to jump into it, Jared?
Yeah, well, it's especially important because Baltimore is your old stomping grounds, with the FBI there. And, it's so interesting. For those of you that don't know, CODIS is the national database, and that's kind of the database that the FBI kind of safeguards and kind of controls who and what can be put into that, including the strength of the DNA profile that gets put into that. There's lots of databases, but then the CODIS database on the national level is kind of the cream of the crop. So if there's a DNA profile that is put into CODIS, that means that it's strong. It has lots of markers in it that identify the individual. And what Tom just said, where got a hit, that means that one of two things. One, it hits on another crime, which is the case in this individual, or two, it hits on an individual. So, yeah, talk about that, Tom. Where it went.
Yeah, we had one similar to this between Pittsburgh and Hagerstown, Maryland, over the span of about 30 years, a child kidnapper and rapist. And we had a match to a CODIS, but an unknown person. So it goes back 20 years, two little girls up in Pittsburgh area, and then one in Hagerstown. And we didn't know who this person was till we were able to identify him. And I say it was my counterpart up in Pittsburgh. And she submitted the fingerprints and got an NGI, the evolution of APHIS, and a hit on fingerprints. So that's the other database that we know that will get these guys. But in this case right here, our offender left DNA material behind, presumably from a rape, and that badly beating her, and it entered into CODIS. We have a surprise hit, or it's rather surprise release of information, in as much as we have an unknown person, but we have a CODIS hit to another offense that took place out in Los Angeles, a residential burglary, and what they're calling is a home invasion burglary. Per the California Penal Code, they have that specifically. So it's a bit confusing when they call it a home invasion. We don't think of it in the same terms as the violence that happens. So our viewers may be familiar right now with the kind of passive the way he's leaving the house right now. We can talk about that a little further in the episode.
Yeah, and in fact, before it escapes my thought here, I watched that video of him leaving that home. And as he's closing the door, as he's leaving that front, where the ring, I'm assuming it's a Ring doorbell that catches him and catches his images both from the side and from the back. And there's like 2 hands from the inside that it's like somebody was kind of, trying to get him out of the house or something. It's kind of I don't know if you saw that or not, but
I did. Yeah. And a lot of speculation on that and a lot of armchair sleuths out there. Some have great suggestions and some are just throwing stuff out there. But we've got to guess that he came through another point of entry, another part of the house when he came in, and then he left out the front door. And we also, I would assume, and this is not uncommon, is that the victim was able to talk him out of leaving there and calmed him down and formed some kind of bond with him. And they're being very tight-lipped with the information out there. I'll jump right into it. From the place is the 77th Division in Los Angeles, South Los Angeles. And the police out there are being very tight-lipped about it. They're saying that the assault that took place was not sexual in nature, and then they didn't say anything more on that. And then our subject or suspect leaves the house with his shirt off, and he departs the area. He walks away, and pretty much nonchalant deportment. He doesn't have any sort of haste or anything like that, and leaves out of there. And you see what appears to be a female's hands off screen over there, or a set of hands are over there, as if to calm him down or to close the door behind him, and almost like a conversation that's taking place. Now, we're reading into a silent video and trying to make sense of it all there, but I would guess that the victim was smart enough, or she used her guile to try and get him out of there before he did something worse, because we would have heard of something worse over here. So we have this very strange burglary, this home invasion, as the California Penal Code calls it, where he made entry into the house over here, did some kind of assault, but it's not sexual in nature. They're not telling us anything more from it. And of course, we're at a handicap not knowing that. And then we have this hit that takes place. And by the way, this was in March of earlier this year. So it's 5 months ago. And that's the difference. And I trolled some of the comments on the Hartford County Sheriff's Office page. And I thought this one's great. And I give a nod out. Patsy Altobelli Barbado. She says, although the video isn't extremely clear, I keep going back to the subject's ear. He appears to have a cauliflower ear, which is often seen in boxers, wrestlers, MMA. And sure enough, I looked at that. And of course, we're looking at grainy video, but as he walks away, it almost looks that way. And this guy's pretty jacked. He's got some good set of muscles on him. So, not a bad thing, not a bad lead, and a good observation. So I love citizen sleuths are on top of their game, and I love people that think outside the normal paradigm. Back to you.
Yeah, well, our friend Cheryl McCollum has said that multiple times. She's like, there's so many cases out there that the detectives, if they get their first shot at it, and if they can't solve it, man, put it out to the public. Somebody's going to notice something. And kudos to the Los Angeles Police Department that would put this video out there, because somebody knows this guy. And if this guy is, DNA has connected these two. And so if this image is, he's gone from a burglary just a few months ago to now he's jumping some poor lady as she's jogging down a trail, man, he's obviously upped his game. But this guy's a serial criminal and, probably got some psychopathic tendencies, and who knows what it is that's driving this guy. It's so interesting that in today's society, you have so many men, especially young men, that are being shut out from a lot of different things, including access to a female partner. And some of them are just lashing out. They're getting to the point where they have no hope. They have no prospects for the future. And so, some of them are just lashing out against individuals. Some of them are just lashing out against society in general. And as we were reviewing a lot of the area, and, Tom, when you put together some of those areas of danger versus safety along that trail, I thought it was really interesting that there are so many times that these parks that different cities put together, especially when you get anywhere from, west or east of, say, Colorado, you start getting into really thick foliage around these parks. And there's so many blind spots. And what do most people do when they go walking or jogging? They'll put the headphones like these on, and or the AirPods, or some kind of a device where they're listening to music, listening to a podcast or something. But you have all sorts of noise canceling things, and it is so easy to. I've actually done this experimentation where I've been part of a self-awareness type of a class, a situational awareness. Sorry, where you don't have headphones on and you're walking down a path, and somebody comes up behind you. You can usually pick up the sound of their footsteps 5-10 feet away. But when you have headphones on, which I almost guarantee this lady had headphones, Rachel Morin. And they said that Rachel loved to go out on this path. What was the name? Monpa?
Yeah, it's the Monpa Heritage Trail in Harford County, Maryland, northeast of Baltimore.
Yeah. And, when they're in what you called the safe areas, where there's open terrain on both sides, and you're just kind of, going down a path, a lot of people would be able to see a long distance. And then you get into these danger areas where there's a tunnel, there's a path that kind of narrows, there's thick woods on both sides. Those kind of areas, somebody could easily conceal themselves. And as you go by, if you look like the type of target that this guy wants to target, and jumps out of there, and if you've got your headphones on, there's no way you could hear him come up easily, rapidly come up from behind, and a good blow to the head.
Yeah.
And she's going to be stunned. He'd be able to drag her into the woods, do whatever he was going to do, whether it's, just physically assault her, rape her, whatever he's going to do. But from the sounds of it, when they found Miss Morin the next day, she was in pretty bad shape. So obviously this guy had a lot of anger in there, and what it is that was driving him doesn't really matter. But the key is, hopefully through all this DNA and this connection and putting it out to the public, they can catch this guy.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's go pure ranger school on this, Jared, and talk our way through what happened here and how and maybe the reverse of what we did in ranger school years ago, and apply this here. And, perhaps a sense of artificial confidence that comes from you're used to walking in these open areas. There's a lot of people, but now we're at 6:30 p.m. 2 weeks ago tomorrow. The daylight's a little bit longer in summer for sure, but you're used to seeing buildings around there. Well, none of those buildings are open that are on the map, but nobody's open at 6:30 at night, and people are generally having dinner and it's Saturday night, or they're going out for Saturday evening stuff. So there's probably not a lot of people, and the open areas will lull you in, and then you're channelized into these tight danger areas, as we would call them, back in the Army. And that's where you just know something bad can happen there. And these are tight little places that can't be seen. Leopards don't change their spots. We used to say that on every episode. This guy was probably stalking her and knew her pattern of life, and he was waiting for her. And those guys that, one of those 4 types of rapists, that's what does it for them, is that whole hunt, what they do. And there's some bleed over, but that's generally what they do. So in this case, we have our victim. She's out there walking in this trail. We're looking at it just, map reconnaissance, you and I, and some photographic imagery from it. We're looking at least 5 pretty dangerous areas, and then, juxtapose those with the open areas that lulls you in. Certainly nobody would walk down those tunnels by themselves, but you get a sense of confidence, and then he knows that. So she got lulled in by that. And on top of that, I say artificial confidence. Okay. So the playing field has somewhat changed, meaning from the 1970s when we grew up, ladies sort of had a lady role, and men were the protectors. And that became a bit more porous as women came into sports and could care for themselves, could handle themselves in jiu-jitsu, judo, even mixed martial arts and things like that. So that can give you a false sense of confidence, but you have a guy who's just intent on a blitzkrieg act, and he knows what happens. a trained fighter or a wrestler, an MMA guy is used to getting hit in the head, and he won't even respond to that. He's going to slip it real quick. But most ladies are not equipped that way. It's not to say, of course, you can't be trained in that way, but you just don't have that same upper body strength and that. And if you're getting ambushed and you have a set of earphones on, it just makes for a bad situation all the way around, unrecoverable situation, and that seems to be what happened. And if you hit her with an object, forget it. I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Well, I remember in high school, my older brother got kind of blindsided by a dude, and the fight was over, one shot, and that it was just a really hard hit. And, he was pretty good size for his age, but it didn't matter. I mean, the other guy got the first shot in, and if that's the case, he was stunned enough that the fight didn't last very long. But especially if this guy had a cauliflower ear, that tells you a lot. That means that you are accustomed to being, having your head mashed into the mat, and if you're doing that enough that you've got that cauliflower ear, you've got wrestling skills, you've got, like you said, you're accustomed to being manhandled basically, and working through that pain and working through that difficult situation. So yeah, if that's the case with this guy, he said they identified him 5'9", 160. It's not a big guy, but definitely if he's pretty muscular and in decent shape, he could do a lot of damage really fast. And I'm sure that's kind of what happened. And, my biggest thing with this scenario is kind of looking at, and I think this is another one of those situational awareness things where people need to start understanding that just because you live in a nice neighborhood and it's a suburb, it's away from the city, there are no safety zones anymore. And you have to look at areas and consider, like schools, for example, are supposedly, no gun or gun-free zones. Well, that is an extreme soft target. That is there's a reason, schools and hospitals, Times Square, these gun-free zones are such hot targets for some of these really crazy people. Well, on that same level, in that same kind of mindset, trails and anywhere that's away from people, those are soft target areas too. And if you go into those and you don't have any kind of situational awareness, you are now the target. And, not that I want people to have this extreme paranoia and not enjoy life and get out into the outdoors and do their thing, jogging and exercising. I mean, that's critical for all of our health and wellness. But at the same time, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. And whether it's a wild animal or a wild person, either one of them is going to be a danger to you. And, I grew up in Idaho, and I was always more afraid of, going into some kind of woods like that, what kind of animal I was going to run into. But, we could go for a long time and not even see another person. But in today's society, especially in an area like Baltimore, you just have to assume there's going to be other people around, and you got to be aware of what kind of people are going to be there.
I think Gavin de Becker, he coined the phrase, the gift of fear. Actually, it was a book about 30 years ago. And that gift of fear, and you've got to develop that. And it's not to say be hypervigilant, but if you don't have that, you're making yourself quite the victim. It becomes high victim precipitation in that case. And repetition does it too. You go, 50 times to the park and nothing happens and you're used to it. Soon, economy of force and become efficient, and you get into your pace, and that's your comfort zone, your relaxation. You put your ear pods on, if that's what happened, and off you go. And these guys are looking for that. They're looking to exploit that, just like any criminal or any bad guy. And soldiers in war are going to look for that lull, that repetition, that laziness in between, and that repetitive route is what gets people killed. It gets people killed in assassination attempts. From dignitaries and VIPs, is not being, not changing up your pace at all. So, this is part of the whole equation that happened there. And it's those dangerous places and going a little bit further, I see other areas of entry and exit out of there. So he probably had his car parked in another area where there were no witnesses. And they said they didn't recover her remains until 1 p.m. the next day. She was reported missing 11:30 p.m. per boyfriend. So we have that 14-hour lull in between that happened. So and there were indications that she was dragged off there. And if we go even further on that, we say this guy was, he's got good sized lats. He's physically capable. If that cauliflower ear does hold and that he's got blue belt or serious JV wrestling and above skills, I mean, he'll make quick seconds. He'll make quick work of that in no time at all. And even an unskilled person would with the blitzkrieg, but somebody with skills, it's very, very quickly to do. But, we're hypothesizing on that. But this is all bad things that could have happened on that. Yes, surely you go into a worse park. There are worse situations, but this is just a bad one right here. And it's generally a safe place. Hartford is quite removed from that.
Yeah.
Some of the rough areas of Baltimore, but still. And that's a lull of UN too. You just never know where these things come from.
Well, a lot of these predators know that. And they also know that, there's going to be women around like Rachel Morin, who, I mean, she's an extremely attractive lady, and, being a mother of 5 didn't slow her down at all. I mean, out there exercising and keeping healthy. And I'm sure this was close to her home. So, that was just probably her relaxation and her running spot. But in today's society, the bad guys just are more bold than they used to be. And part of that is because, you have DAs in certain areas that don't prosecute the smaller crimes. And so people get emboldened and they become more and more, just brazen about the crimes that they commit. But there, like I said, there's also that unique situation that social media specifically has caused, where more and more men are being kind of shut out of the game. And this is causing just a rage that's developing in all of these younger men that, if they're constantly being shunned, it's the same thing that they're hypothesizing about, that Brian Kohlberger guy up in Idaho, where, the young girl that he was kind of targeting in the house. She was had a big Instagram account, but she was young and attractive, and he had been sending her DMs, and she just wasn't responding to him. So he was kind of shut out of whatever his targeted desire was, and eventually it broke him, and he lashed out. So whether or not that's the scenario with this guy, but the fact that he would have multiple crimes in multiple, you can't get much further away than Baltimore and LA. So, what is it that, how did this guy get from LA in May all the way out to, was it May or March?
It was March 26th, I believe.
Okay. So he's in LA in March, and then Baltimore 5 months later. What brought him out there? So
yeah, what probably brought him out here was people were asking questions about getting in the house. I mean, when you have a solid cops and they know this and they go to their graves working this stuff, when you have somebody who's a naughty boy, and they're doing stuff like peeping in windows, or they're getting into, and they're graduating and evolving and they're making their way into a house, he may not have pushed it all the way because of what we're hearing from in the open source material out there. But he had some kind of evolution that took place, and he had a 5-month head start. So he wanted to get out of that area so he doesn't undergo any scrutiny. So, okay, let's say they have authority to detain him and they want to do an investigation. So he's going to say, I'm not talking to anybody. These days, that's more common. I'm not going to talk to anybody. Usually what happens is, I'm not going to talk to you. That puts the spotlight on you because most people will cooperate. Of course, that's changed with the internet and people's resistance to the police right now. But still, now you've really made yourself target number one, and they're really going to start looking at you. What happened over here? But better yet, remove yourself from the whole situation. If you don't really have a strong connection to the community, and even if you do, and this is why you would see a lot of serial killers and rapists work these iterant jobs, and they would move from area to area. And especially the golden age of serial killers, they were able to do that through that porosity that is the U.S. back in the day. So he just up and leaves and puts that distance in between them. So nobody's ever going to interview him or say anything, and less people are likely to see that person. If they, I don't want to say if they care, there's just priorities. If you have lots of part one crime, violent crime going on, there's only so much you can do. And you spread that out and you become a successful rapist and killer. That's what you're inclined to do. And that's probably what he was doing by putting that distance between them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this guy escalated really fast. So.
Or something happened. I mean, in the Christopher Wilde case from the 1970s, 80s, as I recall, he was a really vicious serial killer, Australia originally, and then he let one girl go. He bonded with her somehow or another. And, there's probably a body count of about 30 with this guy, and he was traveling all over the country, but he let one go. And we don't know what it was. And what was it with this girl, or did he remind her of something? We're not going to know until this whole story comes apart. The good news is they're on the case and they've got viable leads right here. This is not a non-CODIS hit, and someday we might hit it. But there's a lot of good things that are going on right now. That's what, excites me is the forensics about this, to watch this one and, circle back. If you don't mind, I'll go through the batting order of what's going on right now. And the agencies involved. Of course, we have Hartford, and then we have Maryland State Police running the CODIS on this. But now LAPD is very much involved, because this all of a sudden elevated their simple walk in the back door. And even though he's a home invasion by their penal code, this is a serious. Now we have somebody so those two are formed up, those two agencies have formed up a task force, we know. And we know, let's see, the crime scenes that have been worked or will be worked is of course, we're way past the autopsy. So we know whatever was derived from that is long gone and put into CODIS and everything else, and nothing's there at the Heritage Trail anymore. They're going to be revisiting that burglary scene, and somehow they got DNA there. So I got to guess that it's not biological material. I'm going to say maybe it's skin cells that happened, or maybe it was something else. We don't know. But when they steered away from the sexual nature of it, it's telling me that's not semen that was left behind. I could be totally wrong. That could be totally wrong. And we just don't know. We're operating in a vacuum here. But there was DNA material that matched that out in LA. Great time now. So now we've got this guy in two locations. They're going to work off of that. If they don't have boots on the ground in LA, they soon will, or they're ready to fly at a moment's notice when something develops out there. And the LA guys are going to be working the heck out of this. So what else is going on? They're going to work this backwards for, forensic genealogy and build this guy's profile till they get to a family member and narrow that down pretty quickly. And that's what's probably it's going to be a race in between the two, what gets him. I mean, unless we have something else like fingerprints to identify this guy inside the house, and they revisit the house and somebody recalls something, to that effect, or, they really canvass that area and say this, all hands on deck type thing. But it's a matter of time now on this guy, because he's not going to let this one go. This is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, once it's elevated to this, yeah, I mean, that's a serious assault. And just, it's interesting how the information that the Hartford, it's not Hartford, it's the county out there.
Hartford. Yeah, Hartford.
Yeah, Hartford County. The information that they put out, it was a very violent assault, but, they didn't leave out or they didn't put out any specifics on that. But, if they're going to describe it that way, you can just imagine. And hopefully, well, I imagine even if she was struck from behind and stunned, she probably put up a good fight, and just, and everybody should. And, when you are in that kind of a situation, I hope if anybody is out there that's listening to this, decide now that you are going to fight for your life, because in today's society, especially, there is no bartering anymore. I mean, unless, I guess I shouldn't say that, because that happened in that house in LA. Somehow that whoever that victim was there managed to get away from him. But if this guy is capable, I can't imagine there's an escalation that's going to happen to go just from a burglary to a brutal murder. in just 5 months. I mean, this something had to trigger this guy, or I mean, maybe there was some weird thing that happened in those 5 months that would take him from being just a burglar to a rapist and a murderer.
Yeah, or we'll understand it when this is all solved and brought forward. But it could be as simple as they said there was a young victim there and she was assaulted. And by the way, for California, that means different than Florida. It's not the threat of, it's an actual touching. So, that's what happened. She was actually touched in some form or something like that. That's what they're saying. Okay. So maybe it was a younger sister or a younger person or a different person that was there than who he was targeting, and it threw him off his game. I can recall, I believe it was Golden State Killer or Jeff Dahmer, when they made entry into the house, they didn't adjust well to what they had. So it kills the whole family. Sorry, I can't recall which one it is, but this guy adjusted by not killing or doing what he was going to do there. And so he may have already had that disposition, or, maybe previously that CODIS was just it wasn't there. It wasn't, he left no material behind to be loaded up to CODIS. But this is an interesting time, good taste to see evolve.
I guess my thought is there has to be more in between that, in order to escalate that, I just can't believe that this guy's only done this twice. So, there's like you said, there's lots of questions to be answered, and by the time they catch this guy, they're going to answer a lot of those, especially once the trial comes out and all the charges and everything like that. So, but in the meantime, all of you that are out there listening or watching on YouTube, first of all, be aware, have situational awareness, understand what is around you, and that what may seem safe isn't necessarily. And go jogging with a friend, have checkpoints. I don't know. There's so many things that you can do, and in hindsight, it's not really fair to tell put any kind of blame on the victim, because she didn't deserve this, and whoever this guy that killed her, 100% of the blame rests with him. But at the same time, I imagine she wasn't the only one on that trail. And so if that's the case, then why did he bypass, one potential victim and focused on Rachel? So, but there's a reason. So,
I think he knew her pattern of life. I think he did. I think he knew her pattern of life, and she went over there. Supposition on my part, and that's what he did. It could have been an opportunity, but to me, targeting a house and going in there. But we had Richard Ramirez out in Los Angeles doing crazy stuff. So, but this guy seemed to have some sort of planning to it. It's not an irrational psychotic act. This is more a psychopathic, and maybe not even that. He's just shy of that, being a rapist that's just going to do what he wants out there. And also, I'll add this: it's the blaming the victim, and everybody sort of has the hue and cry like it's not her fault, that she did nothing wrong. It goes without saying, and that we should have to defend it. But here's the thing. If we don't talk about hardening your target or hardening your house, it's like saying it's not my fault. I should be able to live in my house, but it got burglarized, and go, still doesn't matter. I mean, insurance companies have requirements, and we're not blaming insurance companies for, you locking a house or doing things the right and proper way. So we can't even have that, but it's called victim precipitation. And it's just a contributory cause to what happened over here. If you get yourself inebriated, if you move into areas that are not well guarded or well trodden, you're going to put yourself in a bad position. It's not blaming the person over here. It's just a high precipitation. Of course, what we deal with the MVAC all the time is the death of prostitutes. They're going to have to live with tradecraft and evade the police because it's illegal. And so that's where they live. That's where these guys know where to get this low hanging fruit, if you want to call it that. But that's the heavy victim precipitation. Another one, drug use over there. Drug use has a certain sort of tradecraft to evade capture by the police, or if you're a young person being captured by your parents, then finding out. So you have to engage in some kind of illegal activity, some kind of sleight of hand to keep that secret. And if you're doing that, these guys are going to exploit it. So let's not have to defend victim precipitation or blaming the victim. Rather, let's harden ourselves as targets out here and harden our whole society and make us better, so we're not having these things happen. And that's the thrust of the podcast and all things crime is crime's on the rise. Let's turn it around.
Yeah.
Let's get us people smart. Let's make them little rangers.
Amen. Yeah.
Right.
Rangers lead the way, buddy.
Rangers lead the way, all the way.
But yeah, at the same time, it's one of those where you just, being armchair warriors isn't the answer. But at the same time, bringing awareness of some of the things that could happen and helping other people to avoid certain situations is definitely it. But like I said, even that little exercise that I was part of, where we had people that had headphones on, and we're just kind of running down and it's amazing if you come out of the woods and then sprint towards somebody, how quickly you can be on top of them. I mean, it's just like that. And by the time that person hears, and sometimes they don't ever hear before you're on them. And if the person has 100% ill intent like say this guy, he was intent on raping Rachel Morin, and he came up on her really fast, and even a punch to the back of the head, and stunned her enough that he could do anything he wanted from that point forward, and even if she had some kind of like you said, hand-to-hand type of jujitsu or something like that, if you have no wits about you, if you have, you're totally stunned out of your mind, then frankly, it's, he's a guy. And Rachel Morin, of all the pictures that I see, she looks pretty petite, and not a lot of beef to her. So a 160-pound guy that's trained, he's going to overpower her really quick. And you just gotta face the reality that a lot of men in today's society don't respect women. They don't view women as something to protect anymore. And that's another problem. That's another degradation of society. And until we can get that turned around, everybody just needs to harden, like you said, harden their targets a little bit. That includes your home, but that also includes your person. So,
yeah, I'll add this too. If he's in the country illegally, he's not on the books. He's not on the books. I mean, he's on CODIS in 2 locations, so he's not on the books. And I'm going to guess that's not the case, because being able to get to that park, somebody would see somebody out riding on a mountain bike or on foot, but so he's probably driving around. I mean, a lot of supposition, a lot of reverse engineering on this, but if he's not accountable out there, then that raises it. And so we could have a lot of damage going on in his parent country. We don't know what it is, but logically, if it's LA and that's his point of origin into there, the porous border over on Mexico back and forth over there, we'd have to speak to the Mexican authorities to see if they're having something similar. And that's the only way you're going to track it back. And the family's not over here. And then you're going to have a hard time doing a genetic FGG on this, try and figure out what happened. And I'll also add another thing you said about the earphones being in another ranger school adage or listening halt, security halt. We would break that wire and go out on our patrols. We'd put it down for 10 minutes and sit there, and we'd just shut up and we listen and adjust to the sights and sounds of the battlefield, right? You're hearing what sounds normal and what doesn't. If we're hearing animals stop or birds stop, and that doesn't happen if you have headphones on. You blinded yourself. You've taken away one of your critical senses. And then if we're out on night patrol, which how many were, all the time you're out at night when it's very acute on that travel and that moisture, and it's only 6:30. I get that. But on night, now you don't really have a lot of vision happening. So it's critically important, but we haven't developed that, and we've slipped away to this safety of the internet. And it's, like I said, that false sense of security that's out here. And then when violence visits you, it makes for a rough time. And I don't think this was very survivable. Like I said, this guy just on physicality alone could probably take most people. He just seems pretty jacked. But he's got skills, like I said, and then all those other advantages. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, again, we our thoughts and prayers are with the Morin family and her kids that are now without a mother, and we sure hope that this task force can catch this guy, and we really hope that there's no more victims. But the key is, folks, you've got to be more aware, and you've got to have that situational awareness out there. So, all right, Tom. Well, hey, I appreciate your time, buddy, and your analysis of this case. And again, Godspeed to everybody that's working on this case, and to catch this guy before he targets another victim. All right, buddy. Hey, we will talk to you later, and when we get to the next case, buddy.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.